Welcome back to the Nikki Clarke Show. I'm your host, Nikki Clarke, and we have been doing this for 17 years, transforming lives one story at a time. And I am back with another incredible woman. She is a mover and shaker in her own right. So today we are joined by the inspiring Dr. Michelle Gamble, a dedicated holistic health practitioner whose mission is to help individuals reclaim their wellness from the inside out. With a powerful mind, body, spirit approach, Dr. Gamble guides her clients through transformative healing, integrating natural therapies, emotional wellness strategies, and ancestral wisdom. Her work empowers people, especially women, to release stress, restore balance, and step into a healthier, more aligned version of themselves. So please welcome to the Nikki Clarke Show, Dr. Michelle Gamble. Welcome.
Thank you so very much for allowing me to have this pleasure of interacting with your community.
Oh, it's the honor is mine, and I am so excited to learn about your journey. So let's get to it, Dr. Gamble. What inspired your journey into holistic health, and what pivotal moment affirmed that this was your calling?
I believe that I was always destined to get to this point. I was born with what's called Hirschsprung's disease, meaning when I was a little baby, just born, they realized that I was not able to have a bowel movement. After doing a lot of different tests, they found out that my colon was defunct. It was not operational. At 3 days old, they removed the majority of my colon and they reattached what was left to to a colostomy bag. So my first year of life, I was on a colostomy bag. And when I was finally the weight, the appropriate at about a year's age, then they were able to reconnect the remaining part of the colon with the rectum. This set me up for a lot of different health issues through the years that I didn't even realize the connection, obviously. My mom is a nurse, but in the traditional medical paradigm. And so, we basically went along with the medical paradigm. When I became a teenager going through puberty, I realized that I was having horrible menstrual cycles to the point that I just wanted to cry and pull my hair out. I would have to take time off from school and they would give me prescription strength Motrin. But each month they were upping the dose. My mom became very concerned because she's a nurse and she knows where this can lead. And she asked, well, what's going on? What can we do? The doctor then told her, well, the only other thing we can do is to put your daughter on birth control. And my mom said, oh, heck to the no. You ain't putting my baby on no daggone birth control. And subsequently, that led to our entire family looking for quote unquote alternative methods of healing and health. And that's what brought me to this journey of understanding not only the correlation between body, mind, and spirit, but understanding how everything within our physical body is tied into our relationship with the natural world, tied into our behaviors, our food consumptions, and things of that nature. Later on, when I started having my own children, after my fourth child, I stepped into a zone of deep depression and anxiety, what we would now term postpartum depression. Again, I was completely clueless about these terms. I went to a psychiatrist because I was just concerned that I was going to either harm myself or my child. Within 15 minutes, she says, oh, you're bipolar, gives me a prescription. As I was walking out of her office, it was as if the Spirit of God came down and spoke to me and said, this is not you. This is not the path that I have for you, my dear. And that was the moment that I knew that I needed to do three things. The first thing was that I needed to figure out how to fix myself, how to figure out what was going wrong for myself. The second thing is that I decided in that moment that I wanted to help not only myself, but others. So I went back to school to get my master's and my doctorate. And then the third thing that he shared with me in that moment was that I needed community. I was so isolated, partially because we were at that time still in the military. And, going from one duty station to the next, you don't really develop deep relationships with others. But at that point, he said, I can't do this alone. You can't do this alone, Michelle. And he said, you need to have community. So that's when we started Sankofa Learning Center as a nonprofit organization, and we started doing um, workshops in the community. I got my, like I said, my master's and my doctorate. And then from there, we decided that we wanted to create for-profit and a nonprofit. So we now have the for-profit, which is Sankofa Healing and Enrichment, and the non-for-profit, which is It Takes a Village, that focuses on community outreach.
Excellent, excellent. So, for those new to holistic healing, how do you define it? Well, and what makes your approach unique?
Well, the definition is actually in the word. Holistic comes from holy. You know, we are told that we are one, body, mind, heart, and spirit. And that which God has created or designed is holy, that we're supposed to treat it as this holy temple, the physical aspect of our being. What makes this different from most other providers is that a lot of times when people talk about holistic health and healing, they're talking about another way of approaching just the physical. So they're saying, oh, it's holistic in the sense of not only looking at your adrenal system, but also looking at your digestive system, looking at your neural system, looking at your immune system, and how all of these various systems interact with each other. And yes, that is part of what I help people with, looking how all of these various systems interact with each other. And at the same time, recognizing that there's a connection between what is happening physically with mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. What I share with people is the reality that I have observed over for doing this for over 20 years is particularly whenever we're dealing with a chronic issue, there is always not only a physical component, but there's always a mental, an emotional, and a spiritual component that is tied into what we refer to as a chronic illness. And it is by addressing all of these different aspects of ourselves that we can truly and fully heal. If you do not address the mental, emotional, spiritual components of the illness, then people will have a remission. They may feel a little better, but they're still going to be susceptible to those same patterns of disease.
Understood. So, you emphasize the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. Now, how do you help clients restore balance around these three areas?
We have a simple process, which is ABC: assess,
ABC.
build, cleanse. We start off with doing a comprehensive set of assessments. We have what we refer to as our proprietary comprehensive health risk assessment that is done. It's a survey that is done, and it looks for the various symptoms that people are presenting, and it gives us insight as to whether or not they are at risk of imbalance within the different systems of the body. You know, so there are questions that address the adrenal system, the digestive system, the detoxification system, the mental emotional system, the dental, the oral, all the various systems within the body. In addition to that, we embark on a session. It's like a 2-hour session that we refer to as a Sankofa discovery session. This is where we go through a journey back in time to as far back as you remember, or as far back as your mom, your dad, your auntie, whomever it is, can give you input to. And we start to identify the things that have happened to the individual over the progression of his or her life, and how those events had an energetic impact or imprint on the person. So, for instance, whenever we talk about things like, say, for instance, diabetes, and people say, well, it's an imbalance in the blood sugar. Yes, that is true. Physically speaking, there is a dysregulation of the blood glucose system. The question, however, becomes, what's triggering this? Why is a person eating a certain type of meals? Because if you don't address why people are eating the things that they're eating, even though they know that ding dongs and ho hos are not the best thing for their blood glucose, they're still going to engage in the ding dongs and ho hos, right? So you have to go on this journey of saying, where is this coming from? Where is this pattern coming from? Where is this need coming from? And whenever we're talking about a need specifically of things like sugar and things of that nature, it's a need for comfort, a need for addressing that sense of lack of feeling worthy in oneself. And as long as you are still entrapped in those types of emotions and still disconnected from what you and I may consider as this awesome love of our creator, then you're going to be more susceptible to having a quote unquote need for these types of consumables because it is filling this void that you perceive within yourself.
Yes, that is so profound because yeah, you'll hear I've said on many occasions, I'm a chocoholic, gotta have some chocolate, or whatever food attachments you have, but uh, very often it's an emotional attachment to the food,
Yeah.
and
And
you hear about people who are emotional eaters. That's how
yeah,
they deal
yeah.
with stress or with trauma.
And even when, you bring up something really interesting as it pertains to chocolate, because not only are we looking at the chocolate as an emotional response, but there's also a physiological need, especially when we talk about something like chocolate, because chocolate has within it certain key minerals that are essential for us to be able to calm our systems. And in this case, one of the key minerals is magnesium. So when we
Mm,
say, oh my gosh, I'm craving the chocolate, we need to recognize, okay, what is my body telling me? What is it that it's really saying that it needs? Even when
mhm,
we engage in quote unquote overeating, what many people don't realize is overeating is actually a symptomology of malnutrition because your body is
mm,
saying, feed me, feed me, feed me. I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And you're just feeding and feeding, even with diabetes. What people don't realize is that a lot of the symptomology of people who have low blood sugar is the same as the symptomology of people who have high blood sugar, because the
mhm,
nourishment is the glucose in this case is not going to the cells. And some of the difficulty of the body being able to process the glucose is because there's a deficiency in certain key minerals like your chromium. And
mhm,
so we start to go on this journey of really diving into understanding what are the quote unquote root causes that lead to the behavior, that lead to the imbalances, that lead to the diseases. So that is the assess part of the ABC. Once we have assessed certain applicable root causes, then we go to the fun stuff, which is to start to build. So build is a dichotomy. Part of the building is to rebuild that which has been broken down. And then
mhm,
part of the build is to maintain that which is good, because sometimes we get so caught up in trying to rebuild certain things that the other stuff that we had been doing properly kind of falls to the wayside. So we can't
no,
afford that to happen. So we have to
no,
do both at the same time. So we start to rebuild in terms of physiologically, what are the things that need to be rebuilt, whether it be from nutrition or exercise or breath work or meditation or prayer, you know,
mhm,
again,
mhm,
people can keep on not realizing the key impact of integrating things such as prayer and meditation and contemplation. These are key components to the healing journey, sorry. And then also looking at our relationships. What type of the
mhm,
relationships are we nurturing or fostering? Because our relationships are another form of food. If we have toxic relationships, that's as bad as having ding dongs and ho-hos. In fact, those toxic relationships may be even worse. I have certain people that I have dealt with over the years where they'll come to me and they have phenomenal, pristine diets. And they're like, well, I don't understand why I'm still having these issues. Because they're marinating in all kinds of toxic emotions and thoughts. And those are the things that are actually poisoning them, as well as converting these wonderful foods into toxic entities. If you are embroiled in anger or fear or disgust, that is not the time to eat. That is time to
Mm-hmm.
fast and go into prayer, because you consuming some wonderful organic meal is actually going to ferment and putrefy because your body is so consumed in that negative energy. That is why our ancestors, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, they would always tell us, you know what, baby, sit down and say your prayers before you eat. And it's not just about blessing the food, it's also about helping us to transition ourselves from that ramped up, and really shifting into what we refer to as the parasympathetic, the rest and digest aspects of our nervous system. And then the last part of assess, build, and cleanse, or should I say ABC, is cleanse. You know, a lot of people have no problem with the idea of, I need to do more, so I need to eat the good food. I need to eat the supplements. I need to do this and I need to do that. Well, that is all well and good. However, the other part of this is it's time to let go. It's time to
Mm.
clean house. It's time to ask ourselves, what are the sins that we are creating? Simply ignoring nature's supremacy. What are the false gods that we continue to worship? If I say that I can't live without ding dongs and ho hos, then that means that God has become objectified in the form of a ding dong and ho ho. And so the question becomes, how and when do I release myself from the bondage of the things that are preventing me from becoming the person that I know I was designed to be? And there you go,
Beautiful.
ABC.
The ABC, I love that. I love that terminology. It makes so sense. It's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, very profound. So let's take a look at someone who's visiting you for the first. How do you go through the needs assessment to ensure that your new client is getting the ABCs?
Mm-hmm. Well, it starts off with a complimentary session that I do with people to see if they are in the right headspace, because the first thing is for them to recognize that I'm not a medical doctor. So I don't have any magic pills, potions, powders, and procedures to give you that's basically going to um, quiet the messages that God is sharing with you. So
Yes.
once I'm sure that people are not looking for that, then I say, okay, you ready to rock and roll? Because I know that God wants you to heal and to be whole.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that we do are the various assessments. So we have the online assessments that we do and the various surveys that people complete online. In addition to that, we send people to the lab, because I love geeking out on the science and the specific numbers. So we do a very comprehensive blood panel that has over 80 markers, biomarkers that we look at in context, because it's not enough to just look at the numbers on the lab work. You have to contextualize it with the person, with their story,
Mm-hmm.
with their journey, right? And then the other thing is that we look at other types of assessments. So we do a neurotransmitter assessment. We do um, other types of assessments if they are indicated. So if someone has significant digestive issues, and I don't think that I'm going to get enough information from the lab work, then what we will do is suggest to that person to also do other types of testing, such as stool testing,
Mm-hmm.
or if I know that I'm dealing with someone who has major psychiatric issues, then we would do something that we refer to as the Walsh protocol, which looks for specific biomarkers that give us more insight into different things that can affect the mental aspect of a person, so things like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, all of those things. There's certain biomarkers that are specifically correlated to imbalances in the mental aspect of the person. So once that happens, we'll pull all of that information together along with the information that I've gathered from the discovery call that we had, and we'll pull all that information together we'll spit out several different reports, and we'll have our report of findings where we sit down for another hour and a half to 2 hours to talk with that person about the results from the various labs, the results from doing the various assessments and conversations. And we'll say, this is where we are today. Okay. And this is what we need to do in order to create a change. And so we'll have the review of the data, of the status, the current status, as well as a presentation of a plan for things to do that will bring balance mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So the plan includes things like meal plans and supplements and herbs, as well as essential oils, all of these things that work on the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. We also talk about different exercises,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody is not meant to do Jenny Craig routine of, high intensity and going to and doing the treadmill for 2 hours a day or whatever it is. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
a treadmill routine could be the worst thing for you, depending on where you are and what's happening for you, how your body is responding. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
important to really dial in to what a person needs and how things are impacting on that person. So we will then present all of that information, and then we give people the option of, getting our support moving forward or deciding that they want to just pretty much do it on their own.
I love that. I love that. That's wonderful. And, as you were sharing, I was just thinking of uh, kind of the standards for which aesthetically people see health to be. Like you have to have a certain frame, be on the leaner side, the endomorph or the mesomorph kind of thing. So if you're leaner, you're healthier. If you have more, you're more fulsome, you're curvy, then you're steering away from health. And that really places a lot of issues where it comes to self-concept and self-esteem because of societal voices when it comes to body types. But I know from I'm not have the amazing credentials you have, and I love listening to you, and I would love to learn more. But just
Mhm.
doing my own study about wellness, it's really a measure of heart wellness for health. What do you say about that?
Well, there are a couple of factors. Yes, there is quote unquote heart health. There is also a significant importance of looking at the inflammatory status of an individual,
Mm-hmm.
because if there is significant inflammation within a person, it is going to compromise every aspect of that person's health and well-being. We also have to look at the digestive system, because if you are not optimal in your digestion, if there are certain dysregulatory aspects, that needs to be addressed. So, for instance, you have many, many people, especially today, that have what we refer to as hypochlorhydria, meaning that they're not producing sufficient stomach acid. Now, if you don't produce sufficient stomach acid, you're going to have a lot of issues. One of the issues is that that is going to create more acidity in your stomach, ironically, because your food is not being broken down properly. Subsequently, it stays in the stomach where it acidifies and putrefies and ferments, and the food itself is creating the acidity. And unfortunately, in today's medical paradigm, medical professionals will jump in and give you a proton pump inhibitor, meaning something that is going to lower the acidity of the stomach, not recognizing that the problem is the fact that the stomach is not acid enough. And so now they're making the problem even worse. But in any case, if this is not addressed, it will lead to not only possible complication with your cardiovascular system, but it can also compromise your immune system, because now all of these little microbes that come in through the food that you eat, they're not being zapped in the stomach because you don't have
Mm-hmm.
sufficient acidity. And then thirdly, you're not going to be able to upregulate key minerals such as your iron and your
Mm-hmm.
magnesium and your potassium and your zinc that are all key components to your cardiovascular health.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm saying that it's not really about looking at the external presentation of an individual, but rather really getting a comprehensive assessment done by someone who knows what to look for. Because the other part is that most medical providers only see the numbers in terms of whether or not you're actually manifesting a disease. Subsequently, something, let's give it for instance, like blood glucose. They're going to look at your blood glucose number. And if you are below, say, 110, 120, they're like, no big whoop-de-da. Maybe they'll call you pre-diabetic, but, they don't really get up their panties in a bunch until it hits that magic number. And what that magic number is, now I can give you a diagnosis, write you a prescription for XYZ medication. By that time,
Mm-hmm.
the pattern of dysfunction has become so entrenched in the body that it's going to take more effort to reverse than if you had seen this trend years before in another marker called your fasting insulin, because that is really the precursor of your blood glucose going off. By the time your blood glucose levels start to go off, all hell has reached in your body, because
Mm-hmm.
your body has been playing this game of robbing from Peter to pay Paul, trying to balance and save you for yourself. And so the last thing that is going to go off is your actual blood glucose numbers. And that is
Mm-hmm.
long after all of these other things have gone off the rail that you could have caught long before that particular situation had evolved.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Um, I want to know, how do you stay grounded and protect your own energy when holding space for others?
Breath work and prayer. It's very interesting that you bring that up, because a lot of women in particular, we have the tendency of losing ourselves in our role as caregiver. We are a
Mhm.
caregiver for our husbands, we're a caregiver for our children, and some of us may be even caregivers for our parents. It is critical for us to recognize that there's only one source.
Mhm.
And if we are not constantly going back to the source, we're not going to be able to serve the people that we love. That's why it is very important that we become in tune with that voice. You can call it Holy Spirit, you can call it whatever you want to call it. God is always speaking to us. God is always whispering and saying, Michelle, did you notice this? Nikki, are you paying attention to this? Unfortunately, we tend to live from crisis to crisis. We tend to ignore the subtle signs that our body, our minds, our hearts, our spirits are giving us. Because we
Mhm.
figure, I can put that off. I'll get to it when I get to it. And let me tell you, I am just as guilty as everyone else of doing this. That's how I ended up in the hospital a couple years back, because I kept saying I was experiencing certain symptoms, and I was like, oh, it's no biggie. I'll get to it next week. I'll take care of it next week. And then I was on my back in the hospital with tubes going every which way. And my children, because I was single mom at that time, my children were at home alone. Okay. So the key is that breath work where within each day, I take time to breathe and to just tune in and to check in and say, okay, how is my pain? Am I thirsty? Am I really hungry? How am I feeling in terms of emotionally? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling depressed or sad? What thoughts are going through? What is it that I'm telling myself? And so as I'm breathing and slowing down my breath, and taking it into a meditation and taking it into prayer and asking God to guide me, to show me what is it that I need to work on, and to be open and humble to hear the answer. Because, like I said, He's always speaking to us. It's just that a lot of times we don't want to hear the answer. We don't want to hear that, oh, you know what? Maybe it's time for you to give up interacting with XYZ friend. Or maybe it's time for you to cut down on your scrolling on social media. Or maybe it's
Hmm.
time to cut out some of the activities because we live in a world where we think that we're better if we're busy. Even as parents, it's like, how many activities can I cram into my child's schedule? Really? Is it really necessary to have something
Yeah.
every single day, every single minute?
Yeah.
You know? So taking
Mm-hmm.
time to literally breathe into your space, to breathe into your physical being, to
Hmm.
allow that breath to open up and to expand and to allow the energy to flow for you to have the clarity to see and to hear the messages that are giving you those warning signs so that you can dial back where necessary and ramp up where needed.
Beautiful. So, what exciting projects or programs are you currently working on in holistic health?
Ah, thank you for asking that one. We just started our 90-day holistic metabolic reset, where we're
Hmm.
working with people who are challenged with what we refer to as the seven deadly Bs: high blood pressure, high blood glucose, bloating, belly fat, burnout, blues, and budget. So we're embarking on this journey, working with these individuals to help them to reset their systems in place so that they
Hmm.
can resolve or break away from the bondage to these seven Bs. And
Okay.
the funds that we are receiving from this particular program, we're utilizing for our nonprofit's venture to create a healing sanctuary for military women and children who are experiencing housing instability and trauma. So it's like a two for one kind of deal. You get to help yourself to improve your own health and well-being, and at the same time, help a family in need.
I love that. I love that. Um, so this is our closing question, and you've just been fantastic. I've been learning so much from you, pearls of wisdom today. What message would you like to leave our viewers who are seeking healing, clarity, or a fresh start?
The biggest message is to recognize that you are beautifully, divinely designed. God does not make any mistakes. Subsequently, you have the power to transform your health, body, mind, heart, and spirit. Do not give in to the medical hexing, aka diagnoses. That is man's projection. But guess what? Through your interaction with the tools that God has provided us with in the natural world, you have the ability to shift anything in your life. Anything
Hmm.
in your life. Do not allow people to tell you that you are doomed to a life of ABC diagnosis. Say to them, you know what? I rebuke that. I serve a
Hmm.
higher God, and I know that I was designed to heal. You are designed to heal. In fact, you are healing every minute of every day. The
Hmm.
question just becomes, are you healing faster than you're breaking down? And
Absolutely.
with community, with guidance, with a faith journey, you can transform and become the beautiful person that you were meant to be to fulfill the purpose that you were designed to fulfill in this world.
Mm, I love that. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for everything that you shared. And I'd love to know how people can support you, where they can find you, so that they can get their health clarity, their ABCs in check.
Well, there are different ways that you can tie into us. Number one, social media. In terms of our YouTube channels, we have two YouTube channels. One is for our nonprofit, It Takes a Village Ministries. And then we also have the YouTube channel for Sankofa Healing and Enrichment. We are also available through Instagram, Facebook, all of those interesting things. And then I say, hey, go to our website, sankofahealing.com, SANKOFA healing.com. And you can always book a complimentary consult with us, or, subscribe to our newsletter where we're constantly sending out information that will help you in your healing journey. We release podcasts quite regularly, usually every week or every other week, that always focuses on a topic that will help you in your health and healing journey. And at the end of the day, we are also wonderfully willing and excited about coming out into the community through our nonprofit organization. So we love going out into the community, doing workshops, doing presentations, doing group programming for churches or small groups, wherever you are. Feel free to reach out to us. We would love to help you in your community with the people that you know and love.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to book my complimentary session with you. So,
Absolutely.
keep staying vibrant. My end, I'm 58, proud to say, and
Yay!
just want to keep going for as long as I can. So thank you so much again, Dr. Michelle Gamble. It's really been a blessing having you on the show. So hope we can do this again another time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing us to share this information with your community. And I look forward to us working together. Peace and
Fantastic.
blessings.
Many blessings to you. You've been watching the Nikki Clarke Show with the incredible Dr. Michelle Gamble. Reach out to her on social media. You've got to get your ABCs all worked out because it's about healthy thriving in 2026. So we'll see you next time. Stay transformed, stay informed, and stay inspired. See you soon.